All right, so just a couple things to finish up here in World War II Part 3. We just want to finish up what we were talking about just at the very end there of our last video. This one will be a little bit shorter than the usual. Okay, so outbreak of war. Just back up a little bit here. So it was March of 1939 that Hitler broke the Munich Agreement, and he sent troops in to take over all of Czechoslovakia. All right, Britain and France realized at this point, all right, we gave him the Sudetenland, that didn't work. He took all of Czechoslovakia. Appeasement isn't going to work. This guy's going to just keep taking and taking and taking. So what Britain and France did is they said, all right, here's the deal. We are going to pledge that if you invade Poland, then that's it. You're going to be attacked. It's going to be war if you invade Poland. And they believed Russia would back them because fascism and communism are ideological enemies. They don't go together. It's a story for another day, all right? But they believed that would work. But what no one knew is that Russia and Germany had signed a non-aggression pact in 1939. Eventually, when people found out about this, I mean, people were seriously shocked. As you guys would say today, they were shook. Because now, this opens the door for Germany to invade Poland, the neighbor of Russia. And that's what Germany eventually is going to do. And then Germany and Russia are just going to split Poland in half. So it was September 1st of 1939 that Germany invaded Poland. Britain and France kept their word, and they declared war against Germany. And Germany and Russia kept their word. They were non-aggressive towards each other. They split Poland in half. But soon, it was open warfare. Now you had Britain and France versus Germany. And Poland was the first to fall to the Blitzkrieg, the lightning war, Germany's overwhelming use of air power and fast-moving tanks to quickly take over countries. So now war is full-fledged. By the spring of 1940, all right, so it's September 1st of 1939, Germany takes over Poland. By that point, they had annexed Austria. They had taken over Czechoslovakia. By spring of 1940, they had also taken over Scandinavia, France, Denmark, and Norway. So even like a big country like France, it took them a week. Germany defeated France in a week. By June of 1940, the only ally that remained free of German troops in control was Great Britain. So now, the United States has to figure out what they're going to do. But you know what? The United States, the people of the United States, still were not ready to go to war. So what we're going to do is we're going to unleash what FDR and Congress call the arsenal of diplomacy. Now, one thing we did right away, military advisors, people in Congress, FDR, they realized it's only a matter of time until we're going to have to get involved in this. So FDR pushed the Selective Service Act through in 1940, which basically set up the draft and called for the training of 1.2 million troops in just 1 year. So that way we would be ready to go. Now, some other things that we do to try to get ready for war, but also to help England and France and anyone fighting against Germany. These things also fall into the arsenal of diplomacy. FDR really sees Germany's conquest of Europe as a direct threat to the U.S. economy and the future of democracy for Europe and the world. For any government to work, you need allies that have the same type of government for you. So if we want American democracy to function, we need other democracies around the world to interact with in foreign relations and foreign affairs, but especially to trade with, right? That's why like communism was always such a big fear, because if the world turns to communism, then the United States economy doesn't function anymore, nor does our democracy most likely. So after FDR gets reelected in 1940, he starts to push the U.S. into a stronger position with what he calls, again, his arsenal of diplomacy. That was a quote he had from a fireside chat in December of 1940. He said, "We must be the great arsenal of democracy for the world." And then he talked about what they would do for his arsenal of diplomacy. One part of it was the Lend-Lease Act. The Lend-Lease Act was basically a less restrictive neutrality policy that FDR and Congress pushed through, where countries at war could buy U.S. weapons if they paid cash and they transported them. So, Lend-Lease Act. Countries at war can buy weapons from us if they pay cash and they transport them. It was also called the cash and carry policy. So that way, We could give weapons to Great Britain, who still controlled the high seas with their navy, and then they could funnel them into not only their own military, but others fighting against the Nazis as well. We also had a meeting called the Atlantic Charter. FDR and Prime Minister Winston Churchill of England met on a boat off Newfoundland to draft the Atlantic Charter. It outlined their peace objectives for after the war: self-determination of nations, no territorial expansion, and free trade. So clearly FDR, again, putting the United States into a stronger position that, hey, if we get involved in this war, these are some of the outcomes we want. And then July of 1941 is one of the biggest moments in the arsenal of diplomacy. It's when FDR and Congress signed off on the Shoot on Sight Act. Okay, so FDR extended the Lend-Lease Act with the Shoot on Sight Act. This allowed U.S. ships to carry arms as far as Iceland, and it also gave U.S. ships the ability to sink German submarines. Okay, so now the Navy has orders to shoot German submarines and ships on sight. Shoot on sight. You can shoot German ships on sight that are trying to mess with our ability to lend and lease weapons to the Allied powers. So we're increasing the size of the military. We're outlining some war goals and some post-war goals, and we're trying to help our traditional partners, England and France, as they fight against Germany. And FDR talked a lot about we had to do this so that way we could protect the 4 freedoms that democracy is based on. The 4 freedoms were freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. And this was, kind of like a repetitive phrase that we heard in the arsenal of diplomacy that FDR pushed for as he talked about the arsenal of democracy, the 4 freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from want, freedom from fear. This is why we have to help the Allies as we try to do our best to stay out of the war, but also not see all of the world be taken over by Germany and all of the Pacific be taken over by Japan, which, by the way, we haven't talked about very much yet, but that's where we will pick up in World War I, Part 4, is the attack on Pearl Harbor. All right, great job. We'll see you next time.